Okay, so this is going to be the homework that you're supposed to be doing tonight on 311. So for each of the quadratics below, there's 3 things we have to do. The first thing we have to do is we've got to find the zeros, and the only way to find the zeros are by factoring. The second thing we have to do is find the axis of symmetry. The axis of symmetry has to be found by using the formula x equals negative b over 2a. The third thing that you're going to need to do is find the vertex, and that's going to be using the axis of symmetry and plugging in to find y. So if we just do this first one right now, I will do all of them, but it's the first one now. So I'm just going to kind of get rid of these for a second. Then we're going to come back later. In order to factor 2x squared minus 8, you'll pull out a GCF, and the GCF is 2. What's left over is x squared minus 4. You need to understand that inside the parentheses you have a dots problem, so you'd factor again into 2, x minus 2, x plus 2. The fact that we have to solve this, we've got to set the equation equal to 0. When you drop down your wall, it turns out that you're going to get 2 zeros. One 0 is going to be x equals 2, and the other 0 is going to be x equals negative 2. So this is the answer to the first part by factoring. The second part says you need to be able to find the axis of symmetry. The axis of symmetry with this equation, so y equals 2x squared minus 8. The axis of symmetry is the formula x equals negative b over 2a. Well, in terms of finding a happens to be the number attached to x squared, which is 2, and b doesn't even exist. There is no x term, so there is no b, or b is 0. Remember, this is all coming off of a quadratic equation where y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. So what then happens is you plug into the formula x equals negative of b over twice a. Again, b is a 0, a is a 2. When you do the math, you get 0 over 4, which is just 0. So the axis of symmetry is x equals 0. That was the second part that you had to do. The third part says to find the vertex, and the only way to find the vertex is to take what the axis of symmetry is, x equals 0, and plug it in wherever you see an x in the original equation. So the original equation is y equals 2x squared minus 8. Well, we know that x is 0. When we do the math here, we get y equals 2 times 0, which is just 0, minus 8, or y equals negative 8. So now we can actually locate the vertex. And the vertex says when x is 0, y is negative 8. You've now just done all 3 pieces. Okay, so we found the zeros, which is here. We found the axis of symmetry, and we found the vertex. All right, let's take a look at the next one. So the next one you're looking at is y equals negative 2x minus 3. Sorry, I didn't do that right. Y equals x squared. X squared minus 2x. In order to do this in terms of factoring, then we need to actually do an IAM on this problem. And the IAM is going to be x minus 3, x plus 1 equal to 0. When we find our zeros, we're going to get the zeros to be 3 and negative 1. So these are the zeros. The next part says to find the axis of symmetry. Well, the axis of symmetry is going to be found by knowing the formula x equals negative b over 2a. Well, if I look at the original equation, I know that the a is a 1 because it's a 1x squared, and I know that b is a negative 2. So when I plug this in, I'm going to say x equals negative b over twice a. Again, b is a negative 2, a is a 1. When you do the math here, you get negative over negative negative becomes a positive. 2 divided by 2 is just 1. So the axis of symmetry is the equation where x is equal to 1. Last part. And the last part is going to be we need to now find what the vertex is. So to find the vertex, I go back to the original equation, and wherever I see an x, I plug in a 1. So in the regular equation, I'm going to get y equals x squared minus 2x minus 3. Remember, the axis of symmetry is a 1, so I dump in a 1 in both of those places. 1 squared is 1, 2 times 1 is 2, so it's 1 minus 2 minus 3, and this becomes negative 1 minus 3, or y equals negative 4. And so now I have a vertex. And the vertex is going to be when I've got my x being 1, my y becomes a negative 4. So those are the 3 pieces for problem 2. Let's keep going. Problem 3 is this one. Y equals x squared plus 5x plus 6. To factor this by I am, it's x plus 3, x plus 2. To find the zeros, x is negative 3, x is negative 2. That's the first part of your answer. The next part is to use the equation x equals negative b over 2a to find the axis of symmetry, understanding that a is 1, b is 5. So then x equals negative b over twice a, negative 5 over 2 times 1. Here you get a fraction, negative 5 halves, not a big deal. Axis of symmetry is x equals negative 5 halves. That's your second part. Your third part then means you've got to go in and find what the y value is. So then for the third part, we've got y equals x squared plus 5x plus 6. I'm going to type in negative 5 halves, negative 5 halves. Here we're going to do some fractions. You should be fine. When I square negative 5 halves, I get 25 fourths. When I multiply 5 times negative 5 halves, I'm going to end up with negative 25 halves plus 6. Well, I need to change these halves into fourths. Hopefully you realize that you're going to get I'm sorry, that should be positive. So you're going to get the positive 25 fourths. So 25 fourths minus 50 fourths. If I change everything into fourths, I should be able to change 6 into fourths. Sorry about that. I should be able to change 6 into fourths. And 6 over 1 equals 24 over 4. So now when I look for my y value, 25 minus 50 is negative 25 fourths plus 24 fourths. The y value is negative 1/4, which means vertex. Go up. I'm trying to extend the page. It's not working. Here we go. So the vertex ends up being when you get negative 5 halves for x, you get negative 1/4 for y. Feel free to turn these into decimals if you want. Not a big deal. But there's your answer. So zeros are here. Axis of symmetry here. Vertex here. We got one more to go. So here's our last one. The equation is y equals negative x squared plus 2x minus 1. Well, the problem here is you can't factor with a negative x squared, so what you're going to have to do is pull out a negative 1 as your GCF. So the new equation becomes I'll factor out a negative 1, which means my polynomial is really x squared minus 2x plus 1. This I can now factor. I keep my GCF. I am inside. and get x minus 1, x minus 1. In this case, when I find my zeros, there's really just one zero because they're the same values. So the zeros here are x equals negative or x equals 1. Next thing you need to do is find the axis of symmetry. Axis of symmetry, I know the equation is x equals negative b over 2a. In the original problem, a is in fact negative 1. Remember, we factored it out, a negative 1, but the original equation was negative 1 squared. And the b becomes a 2. So when I do my equation, it becomes x equals negative b over 2a. b is 2, a is negative 1. When you do the math, negative 2 divided by negative 2 is a 1. So x equals a 1, and this is your axis of symmetry. Last but not least, we now need to plug into the original equation. And the original equation is this. Y equals negative x squared plus 2x minus 1. And again, the axis of symmetry, the x is a 1. When I do the math here, being very careful of my order of operations, I get y equals 1 squared is 1, but attach the negative, plus 2 minus 1. Negative 1 plus 2 plus minus 1 equals 0. And so now the vertex is going to be 1, 0. Okay, so there you go. All right, so that's homework solutions totally worked out. Hopefully that's helpful.